Hey there, and welcome to the Dynamics Hot Dish Podcast, serving up stories and knowledge on Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. This is what's hot in Dynamics. You're now joining your hosts, Ashley Steiner and Merlin Schweik. Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Dynamics Hot Dish. Today, we have the illustrious, I'm assuming you're illustrious, Marquis Caldwell with us.
Slow Jams Radio right now. Like this is like
that was some great vocab usage.
I thought it was
Merlin,
good.
you're always doing our intros.
It's greatly appreciated. Illustrious.
Illustrious. Yes, the illustrious Marquis Caldwell from ClickLearn. He is the partner and sales manager for EMEA, and he is with us. Well, he's with us live, but with everybody else not live, from Denmark, which is, I think, very exciting. So, Marquis, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's greatly appreciated, and very much looking forward to talking to you guys, and definitely getting into everything.
Awesome. So, I guess let's start with tell us a little bit about you. How you got to where you are today at ClickLearn, and just a little bit of biography.
Yeah, definitely. So a bit about myself. I guess there's a lot, but I can condense it all. So essentially, I'm a California native, and then I moved to Copenhagen for my master's degree. And then upon graduating, I kind of fell into a software job developing e-learning content for a compliance company. So I was doing a lot of anti-corruption work. Then from there, I was asked to be the Salesforce admin after my studies were over, and I said, "Oh, okay. I've never used Salesforce before, but I'll figure it out." And then, incidentally, it happened to be my job to train all of the salespeople on how to use Salesforce and build out all the processes. So that was a fun couple of years. Definitely some challenges. You teach someone something, and then 2 weeks later, they forget it and give you the same phone call. So when I started working at ClickLearn and found out what the software actually does, I was like, oh my goodness, if I had known about this 2 years ago, my life would have been so much easier. So yeah.
I find it funny that even on the Salesforce side that people fall into like being an admin, because I feel like everyone I know on the dynamic side, at least on the admin, like, oh, it just became part of my job. So I think it's funny that it happens on the Salesforce side too. It's not like people dream about becoming a Salesforce admin.
No, and I was like a freshly graduated person who just needed a job, and they're like, okay, now you're the Salesforce admin. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever you need.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so where in California are you from?
I'm from San Jose, California, and then I studied at UC Santa Barbara.
Do you miss the weather at all in California now being in Copenhagen?
I miss the weather so much. The last time I was home in September, I was with my younger siblings, and then we were just out visiting the universities because my sister's applying for college. And then we just went surfing in between each one of the schools. So that was nice to just hop in the water. Then the plan was to surf again soon over the winter, but it's shark season. And I happen to live in what's called the Red Triangle. So I said, maybe we'll wait on the surfing until summer when the big great whites aren't out there. So we'll see.
I've never heard of that.
Seems reasonable.
The Big Red Triangle? I'm going to have to do some research on that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it either until I saw the shark attacks or shark sightings.
Yeah, that's so funny. Crazy. So tell us more about what you do with ClickLearn.
So at ClickLearn in itself, ClickLearn is a user adoption solution. So what we do is we provide the software to assist all of our customers and our partners with building out documentation and training material for all the end users. So for anyone that's a Microsoft admin, a lot of times you may get a lot of phone calls and emails asking, how do I do this? How do I do that within the system? And that takes a lot of time from what you're already working on when it comes to developing processes, automating things. So essentially with ClickLearn, you just install the application, then you would just click through your process as you normally would. And then from there, it turns it into 7 different types of learning formats. So there's a show me video, which is essentially a tutorial like you would watch on YouTube. Then there's a Try Me video, which is a sandbox environment for users to actually click through and then begin building up that muscle memory on how the system actually works. And then there's a Test Me video as well. So this way you can test everyone's competency and then just ensure before you let them onto the live system, everyone has that same base understanding. And then there's written documentation as well, like a PDF, Word document, PowerPoints, and then there's, oh, actually the cool part, there's a virtual assistant that'll also guide people through the system as well. So that way it just live overlays over the system itself. So yeah, that's what we do.
What do you feel like is your what's your favorite part of getting out of the end user space and into the ISV space?
I used to be in their position, so it's really nice to help people that also have the same struggle. So once I was building out an entire process, it took me like a good 2 months to solidify everything that the CEO wanted in this. This includes the reports, the processes that the sales team has to look at, all the way down to, you know, what fields need to be put in. All done. 2 weeks later, he says, Marquis, I had a board meeting. We're changing everything. It's like, what?
Oh,
Do you know how long it just took to build all of this? Yeah, man, that sucks. You're going to have to change it. It's like, oh, okay. So then you have to change the
terrible.
entire process, and then you have to change all the documentation. And this documentation was done manually. So it's typing everything out by hand. Then it's doing screen records, screen captures. And not only that, the mouse is fumbling around. So then I have to put it into, at the time I was using iMovie, and then I would speed it up by 8. So that way it didn't, you know, someone's not looking at my mouse for 3 seconds, and then everything went through. So it's nice that ClickLearn takes a lot of that away from the end user and all the admins, because it saves so much time. It's better. It just makes people's lives better. And if you're not using it and you have to type it out by hand, I'm sorry.
Well, it's funny that you say that. I'm an admin by trade. I'm an independent consultant now, but I was an admin for over 10 years. And I'm in the process of moving, like I told you. And as I was going through the drawers in my office, I have this thing of drawers. I found these like laminated, spiral bound walkthrough how-to books that I made probably 9 years ago at a company. And I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, why did we ever think this was a good idea to like, and we mailed these out. We had like 500 users. So we would print these things and mail them out across the country to our 500 users. And I think now, like, oh my gosh, how much easier would that have been with a tool like ClickLearn, you know, to be able to just dynamically and quickly create this training material rather than spending thousands of dollars printing stuff and laminating it.
Definitely. And also, like, now that you mention that, we have one feature called Replay that just updates all the material for you automatically. So, you know, Lord knows how outdated that material was in your laminated notebook, but, you know, it's probably a bit outdated. And then with the Microsoft updates coming out automatically, essentially you need to, if you've written something out by hand or you've done your own screen records, it's going to be really rough updating that by hand. You can't keep mailing those out every 6 months, or, you know, asking people to print something out every 6 months. So it's like, it's nice just to have it all in one central location. And then it's really interesting that you have all the documentation because you don't work there anymore. So it's like,
that was 3 jobs ago.
So no one there knows how to use it. So now you have a book of outdated material, and then the people that work there have no clue what this book is even for, or that if it even exists.
I probably have the last copies of it. Well, the garbage now has, I was like, how did I hold on to these? Like, why did I hold on to these for 9 years? I must have been really proud of the work that I put together, but I just think about how much simpler life would have been and how much more I could have personally gotten done as an admin if I wasn't manually writing these handbooks and using a tool like ClickLearn.
Yeah, and it's also like the user engagement side of things. Like, who's gonna, I mean, it's, you know, kudos to you for holding on to that for 9 years, but who is holding on to these documentations like for this long? And then who wants to read that? Let's say like you've made it, so you're proud of it. Of course you're going to keep it. But if you were to mail it to Steve in New Jersey, there's probably a good chance he's not going to read it. He doesn't care. He's going to look at it and he'll be like, okay, Ashley mailed me this laminated notebook. Thank you. And then he's going to pop it in his drawer.
Yep. And then the next person that goes into that desk is going to open it and find that documentation and say, wow, this is 3 years old.
Yep. And then they're going to call Susan or whoever took your position. I'm like, hey, what is this for? And then they're like, I don't know. Ashley made that 9 years ago.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so true. And I just think about the time, right? The time and, how quickly Microsoft changes. That was actually, I think we were on-prem back then. We were moving from like on-prem to online. So, I mean, it changes so quickly now that you have, the waves twice a year. There's no other way to keep up with process and documentation.
Oh, yeah. It was at Directions EMEA in Hamburg, and they were showing all the new Business Central updates that were coming out and the upgrades that they're doing. And then right after that, got in a call with someone, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to be updating. We're moving to Business Central in the cloud. And I say, oh, well, probably should definitely get, something, because I'm literally at the conference now where they're updating everything you just looked at last week. So, maybe you should start on documenting, because it's also, you spend all this time as an admin building something and then no one uses it. And they just keep calling you over and over again. How do I do this? How do I do that? And it's like, Joseph, I told you last week, same thing. Put the input field in there. I need a date. That's why it doesn't work. This is why you can't generate a sales order.
Well, but it's a lot easier to, just send you an IM than it is to dig that laminated book out of the drawer and find the right answer on page 32, right? Like, I don't have time for that. I just need a quick answer. I'll just ping Ashley real fast. She'll tell me.
Yeah, I always tell people, I used to be a teacher, and I always tell my kids, ask 3 before you ask me, because there's a good chance someone else knows. Or in this case, if, depending on the system, if they're, they have ClickLearn in place, actually all the information is built inside the system, or you could just ask your virtual assistant. It's like an updated Clippy.
Everyone loves Clippy. That's awesome. I feel like you've done so much. You were also a teacher.
Yeah. So when I graduated, I wanted to work in my hometown of San Jose. So then I had an after-school position with the YMCA as an after-school leader.
Oh, fun.
And at that same school, then there happened to be an art teacher position opening. And then they're like, oh, do you know art? And I was like, well, I took art history. And they're like, that's good enough. And I said, cool. So then I was the art teacher during the day and then the after-school leader after school. So it was a lot of fun. And it was nice to give back to the community and just, be at home as an adult.
Yeah, that's really cool. I feel like I took art history in college too. I wonder if that's everyone takes art history in college. You didn't, Marlon?
I don't think I took art history. No.
That was a long time ago for you, though.
It was.
It's
it was
hard
a
to
really
remember
long
back
time
to the
ago,
1940s.
Yeah, let me just check the stone tablets to see. I kept the record.
Yeah, they chiseled in your diploma.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, all the classes I took,
Careful,
the grades, all that stuff. It's all on stone tablets. I've got it out back.
Yeah, don't drop it; it'll break.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Sorry, I'm the one that always gets us off track. So
no worries. It's
Merlin brings us back.
Oh, it's fun.
Speaking of bringing us back, so one of the things that I was thinking about as we've been talking about various, Ashley's spiral-bound notebooks, is that I like the fact that in your intro you mentioned that when you go through ClickLearn, it generates a bunch of stuff. It generates videos, and it generates a bot, and it generates written materials. And that was making me think about some users do really well with written documentation. I'm sure that if I'm thinking, to the mere handful of years ago when Ashley was making this spiral bound notebook, right? There were probably salespeople out in the field who their whole job was paper based. And so flipping through pages to find your answer is kind of what they did, but not everyone absorbs information the same way. And so sometimes you want to have the written material if you're like, oh, I just need to like check one thing. But if you're looking for like, I don't know what I'm doing at all, like walk me through the whole process, sitting down with like the notebook in one hand and like clicking through on the screen in the other hand is going to be like really annoying. It might be easier to watch a video. So I like that it's different types of content that can serve different audiences in different ways at different times.
Yeah, and this is something that I observed while teaching is not everyone learns in the same way. And just having that variety of content allows people to learn in the way that's best for them. And then ClickLearn also has automatic translations, which is another really useful tool for multinational organizations. So essentially, like while I was teaching, some of the kids, their parents would only speak Spanish at home. So then I had to, invest heavily in Duolingo to better serve the students. And then it's just like, okay, so it's not that no one can understand anything. It works better in this language, or it works better in this format. So it's great that some people, they want to read. Some people want to watch a video. Like myself, I like to print stuff out and take notes. And then like my younger siblings, they want to watch a video and then they know how to do it. So it's just having that flexibility within your organization to better serve the end users. Because you spend so much time building out this system, you'll be like, okay, here's this giant system, and then you're kind of expecting this person to be comfortable with it. Like at some point, they probably have used a similar system, but they don't know your process. So it's like, okay, why do I have this field that says, this is the date of when the purchasing order comes out? How do I find the policy for when I need to buy something that's over $200? Like you can have all that stored within ClickLearn, and it's also a nice, easy, consumable way to actively engage the users, because a lot of times when you create a system, not everyone's going to follow it, or not everyone interprets it in the same way that you've presented it. So by allowing them to understand how the system process works in relation to the business process, it gives everyone the same understanding of the philosophy of how the business would like to work and how they want to proceed forward.
Is ClickLearn like system agnostic? Because I know you mentioned, does it work with Salesforce, Dynamics, Business Central? I mean, is there a limit to what systems you can use it on?
So it is system agnostic. And since I've worked at ClickLearn, I haven't seen it work on only one system, and it was a small homegrown system out of Hong Kong. So the expectation was that it was going to work. We were all very curious if it was going to work. And the reason for this is ClickLearn understands the paths within the application itself. So it just depends on how well the application is coded. So if you have a button and you click accounts and accounts is written on the back end, it's going to read it. But if you click accounts and someone coded in, G563, well, that's what's going to pop up. So it's like, in that regard, then there will be some challenges. You can always edit within ClickLearn, but it's quicker when you're using like the main system. So we work with all of the dynamics, so that's what we're very integrated into. Also Salesforce, IFS, Oracle, SAP, Sage, and all the ERP systems. And then any web application as well. So it does read anything in your web browser.
I assume that you guys must have this as like marketing content, but I'm sort of curious, like, what kind of time savings would somebody be looking at? So you mentioned like it took you 2 months to write out this document to document your whole system previously. I'm assuming that's just documentation and not like videos or anything else. But do you have any metrics on like, oh, like your training team will save X amount of time creating documentation?
Yeah, so we say that it takes it saves around 80% of time when compared to doing things manually. It could even save you more. So what's really cool is there's a feature where it shows you how many steps that you've recorded and how long it's taken. So it's a good way to do your resource planning that way. So you can say, it's taken us 2 minutes to record 8 steps. Now, if we need to go this over 3 different processes, then it takes us 6 minutes. And within those 6 minutes, you have all the written documentation, all the videos, and then the live assistant within your system. So that's like a huge time saver there. And it's also like, speaking with someone, they worked at a non-profit, and he was the only person that does it. And I work at a nonprofit. I'm a track and field coach, and I see myself as pretty tech savvy. And when they handed me the system to like, log my hours and communicate with my athletes, I was like, I have no clue how to use this thing. Like I literally don't know who's going to teach me how to do this. Like, oh yeah, you'll figure out. This is no, I'm not. So when I met with him, I was like, I know your pain, my guy. Like, get ClickLearn. Like, just you need this.
That's awesome.
And I say that specifically for nonprofits because they have a lot of people that are volunteers. So they're coming in and out, in and out. There's different people. And then, it could be even like a year later, you have, one new person in finance and 2 new people in communications. And they're like, here's your system. And they're like, oh, I have no clue what to do. And then you have to call someone that used to work there. How do I do this? And it's such an awkward conversation because I don't work here anymore. I don't want to help you, but that's one way to go about it.
I think that does make a lot of sense, especially in organizations where there is a lot of like general turnover, like nonprofits, volunteers coming in and out. And, if the system's changing a lot, you'd have to have people dedicated to maintaining documentation just for the volunteers, and limited resources. You're not always going to have that position. So,
yeah. And, not to be disparaging, but who wants to be in charge of the documentation for volunteers and doing that manually? That's going to be rough.
Yeah, yep. I feel that pain because I work with a nonprofit, and that's my job, is making sure our volunteers can use our systems. So literally this is going through my head as I'm thinking about it. I might be reaching out, Marquis, for your counterpart here in the Americas to talk about.
Oh, you can reach out to me. I work late.
Well, not tonight. Your weekend starts, so. That's awesome. Yeah. So it's true though, because I mean, even with the nonprofit that I work with, we use all Microsoft tools, and you would just, I don't want to say you assume people know how to use it. They don't know how to use everything. We've run into some problems and issues and questions and things like that. And so I'm constantly taking screenshots and putting them in emails, and it would just be so much easier to say, hey, here's documentation that, because I don't work with end users as much as a consultant, but I forget about my nonprofit end users.
And how long does that take you?
More time than I would like for it to.
Well, we also provide a nonprofit discount, so you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll probably be reaching out. Merlin, did you have anything else? Anything else about ClickLearn or?
Yes, I don't think I have any more questions. I know just as a furtherance of the sales pitch, I did talk with somebody a few years ago, this is the pre-pandemic days, so like back in the before time, who had ClickLearn in their organization, and I remember her like talking a lot about how great it was and how like convenient it was to just like generate documentation by just clicking through the system. So there's some independent verification that the software is useful.
Happy to hear. It's really funny. You probably won't like me to tell this story, but I'll tell it anywhere since we're on air. When I was interviewing for ClickLearn, I had 2 offers at the same time, and I originally took the other one. And I was sitting in one of the customer success meetings, and they were going over how they needed to create documentation for their customers and how no one knew how to use the software. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I think I picked the wrong company. So so then I was like, okay, I need to resign. And then I called ClickLearn and I was like, hey, is that a position still open? And then they're like, and then I ended up working here like 2 weeks later.
That's awesome.
So
it was meant to be.
It's useful.
Yeah,
it was meant to be.
That's great. So Merlin, did you want to ask our last favorite question, or I guess before we get to that, Marquise, is there anything else you want to share about yourself, about ClickLearn, anything we didn't get through or talk about today?
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess about myself, for those that I hope that people connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm also a track and field coach. So if you're into athletics, definitely you can, follow along on LinkedIn or Instagram at Mav Athletics and follow the team. I'm trying to win a fellowship with Tracksmith. So the idea is if we win, I'm going to take my team on a training camp because they're tired of running in the snow. So yeah,
That's awesome.
there's that. And then, yeah, other than that, no, what else about ClickLearn? It's definitely a cool tool. I think it's very useful for anyone that's working with any application at work, even if it's small. So if you're, my girlfriend, I always tell her, robots are coming for your job. So essentially, we really help with like speeding things up, so that way you can have a robot to do your job, so that way you can focus on a task where you're actually delivering value. Because of course you're creating this documentation, which is valuable, but that may not be the key reason why you are showing up every day. The idea is that this documentation is in place to help support what you've built, and then from there everyone can work efficiently with it, and then you can focus on streamlining those processes. So it's a very good supplementary tool for whenever you need to make changes. So like in the test me videos, you can see where users are doing well, and you can see where they're struggling. So you can always then discuss with your business analyst or the subject matter expert, like how important is it for us to have this step? And if it is important, how can we better highlight this for our end users, because everyone seems to be missing it. So this way you have something to discuss with your team, you have something to discuss with your management, and it's beyond just the idea of creating the documentation and training material. It's really taking full advantage of Microsoft and your other ERP systems, or any web application. It could even be your Outlook. Like, how much time have you spent teaching someone how to put their signature into Outlook? That could be 2 to 3 phone calls and an email. But if otherwise, you just have the documentation, and that's not a phone call that you need to have, and you can focus on doing actual deep work and enjoying what you're doing all day, and not sitting there doing your own screenshot.
But that's such a valid point, where people always say like, oh, efficiency saves money because we can cut jobs. And I always think about, like, in this case, efficiency allows people to do actual like work that takes human intervention, human, critical thinking and things like that. And so you get more value out of people, rather than just, oh, let me take a screenshot here. That person can provide so much more value, and you can get so much more for your money from that person. So I agree. I think that I like the point that you made there, where you get value from people versus having them do a mundane activity where we can use technology to do that for us.
Well, thanks. Nice.
I agree. And also, nobody likes updating and re-updating and re-updating and re-updating end user documentation. I don't know. If there's anyone listening who actually truly enjoys that task, please send me a message. I would like to hear from you, because I don't believe the chances.
Oh, you're much nicer. I was going to say don't at me, but
I almost feel like that would be the fun person to have on the podcast, though, to get like their perspective, because I feel like we're all so one-sided that I'd love to like hear the other side.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, actually,
100% have them on.
Yeah, I had that conversation with someone. They're like, "Oh, we want to see how quickly." I forgot her name, but they wanted to see how fast she could do it compared to ClickLearn. And I'm like, "Why are you making this lady play this game? Like, come on, guys! Like,
that's so sad.
Just get it or not, but don't do that to her." Like,
man.
So
terrible.
it was, yeah, that was really rough. I felt bad because I'm like, you've worked there. Like, I'm just talking to you guys, but like, they make you do this. Like, you have to compete
Is there a children's
against a
story
robot
about that?
now?
Where the guy has to build the railroad against the machine, and he wins, but then he dies at the end.
Oh yeah, that's
What?
Henry.
How is this a children's book?
John Henry.
John Henry. Yeah, I read that book.
Yeah, John Henry.
How is that a kid's book? That he dies at the end.
It's a kid's book. It's because he beat the machine.
Yeah.
That's so sad. And
it's like nobody believed that he could beat the machine, so he like.
I like it. It makes me work harder, I guess.
Or less.
I don't know.
It would make me work less.
It's an American.
I don't want to die.
I think that's just being very American. Like, how hard can you work, and can you beat a robot? And it's like, yes, I'm American. I'm always going to be number one.
And work yourself to death. That is very
But he
American,
won.
isn't it?
Robot. He won.
He won. I
Killed him,
think
but he won.
he won. That's the whole point of the story, is he's better than a robot. Like,
Right.
Wow.
you need to win. Yeah. That's what I took away from
So
it.
morbid. I'm never reading that to my children if I have kids someday.
What? It teaches the value of hard work and discipline.
And then you die.
You're going to die anyway. At least die number one.
Okay, now that's very American.
I'm gonna send you a copy of this book.
Yeah,
actually.
please do.
Don't you worry. I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay.
I guess on that note, we should probably get to our last question, which is the most important question of any interview podcast, which is, what is your favorite hot dish?
And do you know what a
Oh,
hot
that is
dish is, being from California?
I do, because my mother happens to be from Oklahoma, and she just happens to be the one that makes my favorite hot dish. So thanks, Mom. I really enjoyed the tuna casseroles over the years.
Oh, nice.
She made some really nice ones with like cheese on top, and there's like noodles and the occasional vegetables. I don't want to out you, Mom, but we maybe could have had more vegetables, but I enjoyed it. I liked it. It's my favorite. Actually, I had an English professor once ask me, "Oh, what's your favorite meal?" And I was like, "Oh, my mom's tuna casserole." And he's like, "Oh, okay, you knew that really quickly." Well, it's the easy one.
That's awesome. Would love to see your mom's
Hers is-
recipe if she's willing to share. I know some people don't want to share their family heirlooms.
Oh, she may have been winging it. I'm not going to say she had a recipe.
That makes it even better, right?
Any parting thoughts before we go?
Oh, any parting thoughts? Yes, if you're an admin listening to this, always feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and we can see what we can do for you. So that way you're not slaving away creating documentation by hand. And then, yeah, if you're a manager of an admin listening to this, if you want a happy employee, you should probably invest in a tool.
It's such a good point, though.
Yeah. And then, yeah, support your local nonprofits and donate to charity. I guess that'll be my parting words.
Well, if you don't mind, Marquis, what we'll
good.
do is we'll include maybe your favorite nonprofit or one that you support in our show notes so people can look at it and donate as well.
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. Thanks for coming on. It's been a good conversation.
Well, thanks you guys for having me. It's great, and I'm happy I got to meet you at Summit and get here.
Thank you for listening to the Dynamics Hot Dish podcast. For additional content and previous episodes, check out our website at dynamicshotdish.com, follow us on Twitter at dynamicshotdish, and subscribe to our podcast for notifications. Thanks. See you next time.